Hey folks, this is Rhykker, reporting live from Exilecon 2019. Now, two major reveals have happened so far at Exilecon. The first being Path of Exile 2, the sequel-ish, the major expansion that is being positioned by Grinding Gear Games to compete with upcoming Diablo 4. And the second major announcement, which completely got me by surprise, Path of Exile Mobile. That's right, it is not an April Fool's joke. Path of Exile Mobile. We're going to talk about all of that right now, but first off, the energy going into the convention. So, this is taking place in beautiful Auckland, New Zealand. It's a big flight for a lot of people, so the attendees coming here, these are super fans willing to travel from across the world to be here. And the developers themselves, you can sense the energy, the nerves of this first major convention. But there was a lot of positive vibes, and going into the center itself, they really had things decorated really well. It did not look like some amateurish expo here. They had their stuff together. And so we go sit down, get ready for the opening ceremony, the keynote. We get a nice countdown timer, and then we hear the voice, the one and only voice of Einhar. Greet us, welcome us to Exilecon 2019. And he comes out, the voice actor himself comes out on stage in full-on cosplay, in character. It was such a perfect way to start off the convention. Such a love letter to the fans, a beloved character. He entertained us for a good 10 minutes, tossed in his Einhar humor, and then finally he passed it over to the three founders of Grinding Gear Games, Chris Wilson, Jonathan Rogers, and Eric Olafsson. They talked about how this major update was years in the making, their journey from a small dev team to growing with their each major expansion, their numbers growing and growing, and that daunting task of, okay, how are we going to now outdo 3.0? They started off with just 20 developers when the game hit a release state. You can only play up to Act 3, and then by 2015, they had grown to about 45 developers. They released a new Act 4, in their 2.0 mega expansion. And then for 3.0, they had grown, doubled in size, to 90 developers, and launched 6 new acts. So now to top that, 145 developers. For Path of Exile 2, which is the official title, not 4.0, but Path of Exile 2, they're introducing an entire new 7-act storyline, a new campaign entirely. So the second campaign takes place 20 years after the events of Path of Exile 1, and you'll have the choice to play either the base campaign or the second campaign. It was very important to the developers that they do not split the community with Path of Exile 2. So there's going to be a shared endgame. Again, the campaign differs, but the endgame will be shared. And then all of your MTX, everything that you earned and acquired in Path of Exile 1 is going to carry over into Path of Exile 2. And I gotta say, after they put forth their demo and Chris Wilson was explaining things, we're used to hearing Chris Wilson speaking in his videos, but he was so overcome by emotion. It was really endearing to just think that all of these years of work, all of his success, the company's success, his team's success over the years has culminated in this moment, to be able to share it with the fans and on stage. I could only imagine what he was feeling. So for a while, they were painting Path of Exile 4.0 mega expansion as the next step of PoE. I think they deliberately didn't want to talk about a direct sequel because there's deeper implications there. They are now painting it as a sequel, but again, nothing is being lost. It's launching with all of the same League features. Bestiary, everything that's been added to the base game of PoE 1 will be there at launch of PoE 2 as well. It's not going to launch as a bare game and then get more mechanics added. It's going to be the full PoE experience, but better, enhanced. Right away, looking at the graphics, you can see tremendous improvement in the graphics engine. The details, the rendering, the lighting, new lighting engine, looking really good. Something really impressive as well. You shoot projectiles, and the arrows bounce off the walls, realistically deflecting off of objects. The physics are very impressive. Shape-shifting, coming to PoE 2. Interesting way of shape-shifting as well. It appears that you're going to hit a button and you're going to change into a different shape. They demonstrated werewolf. And then it's not that you have a separate set of skills in that form. Whatever skills make sense to use in that form, like leap slam, you can use in your altered form. So you're carrying over the same skills, or some of them, but now you're doing it in this different form, and the shapeshifting is seamless in the sense that you can, again, pop back and forth. There's maybe a minute cooldown just so you can't spam it ridiculously, but you're going back and forth, and you can do it mid-animation as well. Now, I'm sure some of you right now are thinking, oh, well, how does it compare to Diablo 4's shapeshifting? And we're going to have another video in the future where we fully compare head-to-head what we've seen of Diablo 4 and Path of Exile 2. So stay tuned for that. We also saw a really cool boss fight. Now, this will likely be in the demo. I haven't had a chance to play the demo yet, but I will be playing the demo. I will actually be live streaming tomorrow, so do tune into that on the official Path of Exile Twitch account, and I'll be interviewing a developer as well during this. But they showed this boss fight that was really interesting. It was a multi-phase dynamic boss fight that felt a little different than normal because he's effectively taking us through different areas, and the fight is changing, and the boss himself is evolving throughout these phases. So Path of Exile's been really good with phased boss fights, but this seemed like the next evolution, the next step in the evolution of these multi-tiered, these multi-phased boss fights. PoE's always had really cool boss fights, but if you look at the evolution of the game, you can see from Act 1 to subsequent acts, the bosses get more complex, more interesting, and it's as they've learned and they've grown in their bosses, and this really feels like the culmination of everything that they've learned and beyond, between the animations and utilizing the environment, literally tearing off a piece of the environment and using that as a weapon against us. Again, the crispness of the animations. So moving into this second campaign, right away the bosses that we're going to be fighting are going to be more complex, more advanced, not necessarily insanely difficult, but still more interesting boss fights than the first in Act 1 of the base game. Now, they're not ready to reveal the passive skill tree yet, but they did reveal something that absolutely blew my mind. They are completely changing the way skill gem sockets work. So basically, they have now an entirely separate menu with the sockets, and every item type has the same number of sockets. So every bow you find will have 4 sockets, and it's not going to appear within the bow itself, but in this separate inventory screen. This seems to aid with visual clutter, but also help a lot in allowing you more customization, or more choice rather, in comparing 2 bows, for instance, rather than simply relying on, well, it doesn't have the right sockets, therefore I can't work with this unless I invest into crafting it into something that has the right sockets, the right colors. Now, while they weren't ready to show us the passive skill tree yet, they did say that there are 19 new Ascendancy classes. And they also spoke about upcoming patch 3.9 that's going to introduce new endgame content, new endgame story, in fact. Releasing December 13th, Conquerors of the Atlas will actually put us against exiles. Basically, the story is that the exiles, after defeating the Elder, went on to become power-hungry maniacs, as you would, and now we gotta take them on. So this completely turns the Atlas on its head. Instead of starting at the extremities, we now start at the center of the Atlas. There's more Atlas integration, more things to do with the Atlas, and you can, in fact, level up your entire Atlas, upgrade your entire Atlas, rather, in order to have all maps become T14 plus maps if you so choose. And then the one announcement that I would have never, ever seen coming, that completely blew my mind. They legitimately revealed Path of Exile Mobile. Now, as it was starting, I was wondering, like, is this just like a little joke? Because they even, as they were showing this video demonstration, they had someone on screen, their name and their title, or their subtitle was Mobile Fall Guy. They were basically lampooning things. They were self-aware that about what happened last year with Diablo Immortal and the reception of that mobile game. But it was really interesting to see that the crowd responded positively to this. There was laughter amongst the crowd. There was some laughter, but there was no booing. There was no negative energy. There was applause, and a big part of it was, as after the presentation, Chris Wilson came up and said that they wanted to first reveal Path of Exile 2 and make sure that we were all happy with that, and then add, hey, we've also been working on this. And something that they expressed was they really did not want to sacrifice what Path of Exile is. They want to retain a lot of the complexity of PoE in this mobile title. Now, the last thing I want to mention is some really cool game, and I didn't expect it, but I should expect nothing less from the immensely creative minds at GGG. They have currently ongoing a playable card game, only playable at the convention. When you get your ticket, you're given a deck of cards, and on these cards you have items. Some are weapons, some are armor, some are crafting materials, like an alchemy orb. And then this is it's not like playing Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. This is an experience that you can only experience during Exilecon, because what do? You go up and you find PoE GGG employees who have monster stats on their shirts, and you gotta take your cards and you pick up, sorry, the map fell here. You bring your armor and you bring your weapon. And depending on the stats that you bring and the stats that the enemy has, you're going to defeat him or not. And if you defeat him, they will give you extra cards. You're going to win more loot. And there's stations that are crafting benches where you can use your alch to upgrade something. It's such an interesting idea. It's really impressive. It's a really interesting way of gamifying socialization. It's a way of getting people to meet and interact with the GGG employees, but sort of an icebreaker as well of, well, I have a reason to come up to you. We're going to play this game. You're getting to know the employees. You're getting to interact with other people. You're getting a super unique experience that you could only experience here at Exilecon. To wrap things up here, I think I'm getting a little long-winded. So far, super cool reveals. And we'll have more detailed thoughts in the future. Again, we're going to compare what we've seen of PoE 2 versus Diablo 4. So that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more action RPG content.